wouldn't sleep. I didn't eat properly. I'd have anxiety attacks. I would stay late. I would even answer emails at 12 a.m. and then work the next day. And it was just taking on things that I didn't need to. It wasn't my responsibility. And all I could do was do my best. But in that moment, I felt like I had to do it all. I had to prove myself and prove everybody else that despite these injuries, despite the recovery, I can make this organization be successful. And so, to the point that I burnt myself out at the end, we were able to get out into the black.
Welcome. I'm your host, Roheen Bajram. I'm on a mission to redefine the faces of leadership through speaking, consulting, and writing. Unspeakable Leadership is a space to reclaim our stories and empower each other to see the value in how we, as women of color, lead. I hope you'll join me on this journey of unpacking experiences, lessons learned, sharing laughs, and likely a tear or two. Let us grow together in conversation. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Unspeakable Leadership Season 2, where we get to talk about breaking cycles. And I'm excited to be in conversation with our next guest. Let me tell you a little bit about our next guest, Nataizya Mukwavi. Nataizya Mukwavi is the founding executive director of Black Women Connect Vancouver, a nonprofit organization that addresses critical gaps within the local Black community, with a particular focus on issues impacting Black women. She has also spearheaded the launch of Empowered Black Girl, a groundbreaking conference aimed at inspiring and empowering teenage Black girls to emerge as future leaders. No stranger to leadership roles, Nataizya has held positions as a program manager for the Black Business Association of British Columbia and served as a freelance leadership consultant with career contacts. She also contributes her expertise as a member of the local content advisory board of British Columbia for TELUS Story Hive. Nataizya's remarkable contributions have earned her recognition on multiple platforms. Let me just give you an idea of what that looks like. In 2022, she was honored as one of Canada's top 100 Black women to watch by Canada International Black Women Excellence, followed by a nomination as a YWCA Women of Distinction Community Champion in 2023. And just this year, in 2024, Nataizya received the prestigious Trailblazer Award from Diversity Community Resources, further cementing her commitment to driving positive change. I'm sure many of you who are listening or watching will know that it is such a pleasure to be in the company of an incredible leader and an incredible woman who we get to know a little bit more about in the next couple of minutes. Nataizya, welcome to Unspeakable Leadership. Thank you for spending your time with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I think there's no other way to start off a conversation with really just hearing a little bit about you. Can you share a little bit about your leadership journey and what led you to who you are today?
Right. I won't even say it would be one thing specifically, but just growing up in general, I was always surrounded just by women leaders. My dad also is in leadership capacity as well. So I would just kind of follow along, go to board meetings if like there was no childcare, things like that. So I was always kind of surrounded by leadership in various capacities. And every time I would hear a woman speak on stage or just was just so audacious in how she was speaking, I always knew I was like, this is what I wanted to do. This is who I want to become. And so for me, I think that that kind of helped spearhead my leadership journey. And it always was working around helping women discover who they
Mm,
were. And so that was something that I always knew. I'm like, okay, I'm going to work with women and I want to be bold in how I do my leadership. I would say that's kind of how my leadership grew. Now, what type of leader I became, I think that that kind of changed over time just because you kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work for you in the different places that you work in because some sort of leadership style that you did before doesn't work in the capacity that you're at now. And so I think that's something that I've been learning presently in my leadership style of like what leadership style right now is going to work for where I want to be and where I want to go.
mhm. And I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more about like what does that look like for you in terms of the leadership style? How would you describe it?
I definitely am collaborative in my leadership style for sure. I like to hear others' opinions. I'd like to vision cast and move forward as a team, knowing where we're going and the direction. I think right now in the situation that I'm in, it's definitely collaborative, but I think I also need to be a lot more top down, just because there has to just be a lot more of a kind of a plan moving forward. Especially with Black Women
Mhm.
Connect, we've now reached 7 years, and it's kind of reached a point where, okay, where we're going, how we're going to be sustainable. And I think that that kind of requires a lot more direction from me, and instructions from me versus collaboration.
Mhm. I love that. And thank you for sharing because I imagine with anyone's leadership journey, and it sounds certainly that was the experience for you, was recognizing that there's layers to leadership, and in some cases there's a sort of an ideation phase and a place where you're getting to really think and brainstorm to one where you're needing to really implement and scaffold and build. And so I'm excited for you. I'm excited for where you take Black Women Connect and just where you take your leadership journey just overall.
Mhm.
I thank you for sharing. And you know, I know part of our conversation and what led us to come together today was to really, you know, speak to some of the cycles that we as women of color and particularly as Black women and racialized women, what we have to break. The cycles we break both within ourselves as well as sometimes some of the cycles that we see at organizations. And the particular area that I'd love for us to talk about are some of the labels and the tropes that are imposed on us, particularly two labels that I think you and I kind of said, let's hone in on this one, and that was the label and categorization of being a superwoman or being resilient. And so I'll just start off with saying, you know, what comes to mind when you hear that those terms like superwoman or resilient?
Mhm. I think for Superwoman, you can do it all. You have to take it on. Whatever tasks are on, you have to take it. Rest kind of looks like when you've done the work. And
Mm,
I think it became, for me specifically, it became such a, it made me actually physically sick. Like I actually burnt myself out to the point where I made myself physically sick. And so that's when I realized, I'm like, this isn't something that I want to continue. So what does this look like to be Superman, and redefining what that looks like? So for me, I would say that that was something that I've really had to work on, and I've gotten a lot
mhm,
better. I would say maternity leave. Actually, you know, a lot of people say I didn't take a maternity leave, so I'm not even going to bring that up because people are going to bring that up that I never took maternity leave. But I really did try to rest as much as possible, and I think those are the times
mhm,
where you start to realize like what is actually important. Is my health more important than taking on this? I can do everything.
mhm. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for also. Sometimes we have to catch ourselves in that moment, being like, "Wait a minute, somebody's going to listen to this, and they're going to send me a message saying, FYI." So I hear you, um, and thank you for sharing. Like it sounds like you've experienced something that has had you, that has held almost this mirror to yourself to say, wait a minute, I can't continue down this path. And I'm curious, you know, when that happened,
Mhm.
what were some of the things that you had to do for yourself to recognize that this was a pattern that had to be stopped?
Right. I would say it first started when I did my first senior leadership role, in an organization, and they just, I had, so before then I had gotten into a really bad car accident, and that's kind of where that came in. Is yeah, I was in the ICU for 2 weeks. I had like
Mhm.
a whole bunch of things, but I ended up finding a job like 3 weeks after, just because I didn't want to. Like, I was literally in the hospital bed typing my resume, sending off applications, knowing good and well I should be coming back to Canada and resting, but ended up finding a job in a senior leadership position, and the moment I found myself in that job, they had told me they were in a financial, they were, yeah, they were definitely in the red, and they were
Mhm.
about to close in 6 months, and so I was like, so I ended up stressing myself out because I felt that it was my responsibility, even though I never put that onto the organization. It was my responsibility now to bring them out of it. And so I wouldn't sleep, I didn't eat properly, I'd have
Mhm.
anxiety attacks, I would stay late, I would even answer emails at 12 a.m. and then work the next day.
Mhm.
And it was just taking on things that I didn't need to. It wasn't my responsibility. And all I could do was do my best. But in that moment, I felt
Mhm.
like I had to do it all. I had to prove myself and prove everybody else that despite these injuries, despite the recovery, I can make this organization be successful. And so, to the point that I burnt myself out at the end, once we were able to get out into the black, I crashed really bad. I would get migraines. I was getting sick. Like, I think I got probably 3 or 4 throat infections. It was just bad. Like, and that's when I realized I can't be making myself suffer based on what I perceive myself to be a super woman in this,
Mhm.
because I need other people to see that I can do it as well. But it was to the detriment of my health for sure. And so I think
Mhm.
I've had moments where there was highs and lows just even now, but I definitely catch myself a lot more when an email comes in or things that needs to get done. Does this need to get done right away? Will people
Mhm.
survive? Can I write this as my to do in the morning? Things that I before would have been like, I have to do it now. I have to do it now. I think that that definitely gotten to the point where I learn now. There've definitely been moments where I still catch myself if there's events or projects that need to get done. I still will crash a little bit, but I have a lot more self awareness now.
Mhm. And thank you for sharing, because it sounds like it starts with that. It starts with that catching yourself and being able to say, wait a minute, like, is yes, I can celebrate the strength that I have, and yes, I can absolutely honor the fact that I can multitask and do 20,000 things all at the same time and juggle many balls in the air. And at time, it comes at a major cost.
Yeah.
It comes at a huge expense. And you're reminding me, I think recently, last couple of months, there was a story that was going through LinkedIn about a grad student who had a picture of her being in the hospital bed, and she had just given birth, and then within a short amount of time was defending her thesis virtually. What I enjoyed about, like, not necessarily enjoyed, but what I found fascinating about this conversation that ended up happening on LinkedIn was this acknowledgement from other women saying we shouldn't be celebrating this. This actually
Mhm.
should not be happening. And I'm curious for you, like, when you see like images like that or stories like that, like, how can we break the cycle? How can we change it when at the same time the commentary that I was seeing was also one of celebration and you go girl, and that's how we do it. And so, yeah, what, like, how can we break the cycle?
Mhm. I think for me, it would be tying it to our self-worth. I think
Hmm.
sometimes, especially as Black women, we tie our our resilience, our perseverance, our wanting for the world to see that we're doing well based on our self-worth. So if they see that we're doing well, if they see that, okay, I pushed through every barrier there was, that's my
Hmm.
self-worth. I'm showing you I'm worth it. But it really should be the opposite. Showing that you are a balanced person, showing that you're able to have boundaries, showing that you're able to rest and take that time for yourself and take time to observe and vision cast and look at those things. That's actually what's going to show your self-worth because you're surrounding yourself with your well-being. And I
Yeah,
think that that's going to be the first step for sure.
yeah. I hear you, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's Yeah. It sounds like it's, especially if you're surrounded by people who would validate that
Right.
level of resilience. And I would love to hear, like, how have you found breaking this cycle has impacted your life, your leadership, like, what has that changed for you?
Yeah, I think for me, I've learned it's changed a lot. I think even just, like, my physical health, I can see a significant difference. I haven't even had migraines since I chose to other than just kind of the different migraines that you can get, but I don't get migraines anymore from stress. If
Mm.
I feel my body feel tense, I take a moment, I step back. I take those kind of steps back of recognizing what my body is saying to me, and also just what my mind is saying to me. Sometimes you don't even realize that you're talking to yourself in a certain way, and you need to
Mm.
stop the self-talk that is sabotaging for yourself. I know we talk about imposter syndrome. Sometimes just like those negative things that come to your mind of, okay, well, if I don't finish this, then people are going to think this. Or if I don't accomplish this in this moment, then what does that say about my leadership style? And so I think it's taking a step back of what do you want it to look like, not what other people want it to look like. What is a healthy way to look at it? And those are the ways I've learned to start now navigating what that looks like. I think that there was a many times I found myself in situations where I was digging a hole for myself, where I look back and it's like, that wasn't me in my healthiest leadership style. That wasn't me in a place that I thought that I actually was doing well because I was giving out of emptiness. I wasn't really doing things because there was purpose behind it. And I tried to live my life as purpose driven as possible. And so if I look back or I'm in a situation and there's no purpose to it, why am I doing it? And so learning to kind of take those steps back is what's been the most helpful for me for sure.
Thank you so much for highlighting that. That it's almost like you created a matrix and a rubric
Yeah.
for assessing. You know, where are you going to put yourself in terms of spaces? Where are you going to turn your attention to and provide your energy and I love that because without that level of awareness and that level of like a matrix, we can see how anyone can get caught up in the cycle of needing to then validate themselves, needing to be able to assert their self worth, to be recognized, and to be respected, particularly when it comes to leadership for women of color. Hi, I just had to jump in and share with you, in case you didn't know, I love speaking. So if you're looking for a speaker at your next event, or if you know an organization who is, let's talk. I'm always on the lookout for great wellness tips and any other tips, and I'm sure others are too. What do you do to pour into yourself? What are some things that have helped?
I really like to, when everybody's sleeping at night, for me, that's kind of where my time is. I just like to sit and relax, be in silence. I really find that the moment in silence for me is what brings me back into centering myself
Oh,
into what am I feeling at this moment? What do I want to do tonight? What do I want to remember for tomorrow? Just kind of bringing myself back into a sense of peace. Because sometimes when you go throughout the day, you wake up. For me, my wake up is chaotic. It's like taking care of my son, doing this, doing that. And so for me, like nighttime is actually when I get to center myself, or I know it's the opposite for other people, but I'm not a morning person. So yeah, it's more that nighttime, that quietness that I get to find that peace, listening to podcasts and taking walks, having that conversation with a friend to kind of bring you back to that place. There's certain friends that you can have those conversations with, whether they're in the same situation in leadership roles where you can kind of have honest conversations. I find that those also are really helpful. And I think therapy, I think anytime anybody's in a leadership position, I think therapy is important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you for adding all of those layers again. Like it sounds like there's some incredible practical steps that you've taken, and also reaching out for support, which I absolutely have to just like echo what you've just shared in terms of therapy. I think often in our communities, therapy is such a taboo, if not controversial topic. And so thank you for raising it. Thank you for also bringing it forward, because the more that we normalize that it's okay to get support and get help, the more hopefully others will take us up on that offer.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah. So we have a range of listeners. Often they are women of color who are well into their leadership career. And then there are others who are just starting off and navigating perhaps one of their first leadership roles. What advice would you give to this range of listeners that we have when we think about the cycle of breaking those categories and labels?
hmm I would say find your community, find the spaces that you can be yourself, that you don't feel like you have to put up anything, that you can have the space to be vulnerable, the space to share your thoughts, to share the things that you want to learn, but also to share your success. You should be able to celebrate in the spaces that you're in. And I think it's just really important. A lot of times we forget that in leadership, you're not alone. There's communities out there that are willing to support you. And so, whatever that looks like, because I know for me, that was one of the things I kind of felt alone in my leadership. I didn't feel like there's anywhere that I could ask questions or I knew who to kind of go to. But there's definitely a lot of spaces now I find that you can do that. And also to know that your self-worth is not tied to your leadership journey, that you are your own person and you get to develop your leadership style and whatever that looks like, and you get to be comfortable in that, because that's what's going to build your confidence and that's what you're going to be most proud of.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nataizya, for sharing that. And I know we've been talking about such an important topic that also has some level of heaviness, and I know that just even in this conversation alone, we might just we just begun to scratch the surface
Yeah.
of labels and stereotypes and tropes that don't serve us. So I'm gonna end our time with a little bit of lightness, and so I have two last questions. The first question is a light one, and that is, what would the title of your autobiography be if it had to make people laugh?
Laugh. Ooh. I don't even know. I think I want to be like, okay, I want to say she tried and she failed. And yes, I think that that would be it.
I
Yeah.
love to hear like what came to mind when you came up with that title.
I think it's the honesty. I think so many
Yeah.
times there's so many books out there that you're like, "Oh, she tried and she did it so well," or like she got back up. And there's definitely times that I failed numerous times, and but I tried.
Yes, yes. Amazing. Thank you so much. I know that that was a question that was totally putting you on the spot, and I appreciate it. And I would read that book. So let's just say, you put that autobiography out there, I will be one of your readers. And the last question before we wrap up our time is, often our listeners want to know more about the guests, want to know about the incredible work that you are doing, as well as just know more about you. So, what's one thing that you love the listeners to either do or go to in order to hear more about you?
Yes, of course. You can visit our website at blackwomenconnectvancouver.com, and then you can find all our socials. We're on LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, all of them. And you can find any of the resources as well on our website. If you're looking for a therapist, if you're looking for different communities, there's businesses, all that. You just go under resources. If you also have Black teen girls that you find that would really benefit from having mentors, we have Empowered Black Girl, as we talked about. And as well, we also have a podcast called Girl You Know It, which is also on all streaming sites as well. And I think that's it. You can mostly find a lot of stuff on there. And of course, we launched our Elevate Her conference this year in March. So
Yeah.
next year, stay tuned, as we're going to be doing a save the date as well for our 2025 leadership conference.
Oh my gosh, all incredible like avenues for support, avenues for connection, and just for incredible leadership. So I just want to say thank you so much. Thank you, Natasia, for making a difference in the local community here in Vancouver that no doubt is having a ripple effect nationally and also internationally. And thank you for spending time with us here on Unspeakable Leadership to share a little bit about your journey and what I hope will be a cycle that many of us are breaking together.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me. It was a pleasure.
In the relentless pursuit of excellence, or a mission larger than ourselves, many of us, as women of color, find ourselves wearing the mantle of the superwoman. This label, while often celebrated as a badge of honor, can also be a heavy burden with demands of constant resilience and unfaltering strength. But what happens when the cycle of unending endurance starts to take a toll on your body? Today, we heard a powerful testimony from Nataizya, a painful wake up call, and courage to do something different. Here are three things that I'm reflecting on our conversation. The first, every cycle begins with awareness. The superwoman archetype glorifies stretching ourselves beyond what is humanly possible. This archetype showed up in season one, and I have no doubt will continue to surface in our conversations because the expectation behind it is that for women of color, particularly who are in leadership roles, success is defined by entering and staying in a relentless cycle of exhaustion, bending to the needs of others at the expense of our own well being, and seeing everything as our responsibility. Instinctively, I know this. You know this. We may not even like this. Yet, every cycle has a tipping point or a breaking point. For me, this came after my third burnout cycle. Three, not one, three. I'll share a little bit more about this in a later episode. Burnout, the deterioration of our health, isolation, and so much more. They are not healthy definitions of success, even when externally you are appearing to get things done and you get validation that you are doing so much more. It's also not the definition of resilience, especially when the bouncing back isn't happening quickly enough. A weekend is just not enough time to rest. This is how you'll know that you've hit the tipping point. And it's my hope that you will exercise grace for yourself. You see, to break a cycle, we need to choose a different way of being, a new paradigm, a new way at looking at yourself. And my sister, I know that this is the hard part. This is where all the defaults and the inner criticism overwhelm our systems. But here's the thing, we can create a world where we, as women of color, can say, I need a break. I can't do this. Or I don't know, without the fear of judgment or repercussions. It begins with visualizing a new definition of success for each of us, in which we add criteria like joy, balance, boundaries, and energy fulfilling activities into making decisions on what we take on, where we choose to go, and who we spend our time with. Remember, knowing the influence you have on others in your life, our true strength lies not in enduring without a pause, but knowing that we too can and deserve to thrive. There is an African proverb that says, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. What is one step you can take today to start breaking the cycle of the superwoman in you?
The world needs more of you being just you. As always, take care of yourself and see you soon.